I'll go ahead and do that then. Good evening. I know most of you, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Jennifer Pendergrass. I'm the president of Georgia TESOL this year. We're pleased to welcome you to our town hall event for higher education. March 2021 marks the anniversary of COVID-19's arrival in Georgia. It's been a year of hardship and loss, to be sure, but it's also been a year of joining together as TESOL professionals and overcoming obstacles. Now, as we look ahead to our critical work in education during this phase of the pandemic, we prepare to face this new challenge together. We're honored to host this outstanding expert panel in TESOL higher education, and we're also eager to hear from you. It's my honor to introduce our incredible moderator, Georgia TESOL's second vice president, the amazing Dr. Priscilla Noble.
Well, hello. Yes, Jennifer's always so gracious, and and truly we have overcome some great obstacles this year, but it has been sort of, like she said, it's been kind of a ups and downs because of COVID. I think we've had more opportunities, I think, to meet up with people that are far away that we wouldn't generally have an opportunity to have conversations with. And I think that tonight's town hall meeting will be one more example of that, where we get to meet up and talk to people. I mean, right here today, we have this very distinguished group of panelists that is joining us. And I don't want to go too long in talking about their great accolades, but I would still want to make sure that we don't miss on any of those things. We have here with us Ethan Trinh, who I'm always mispronouncing his last name. Ethan is a doctoral student at the Middle and Secondary Education Department at Georgia State, and used to be my colleague over at ICT back in the day. Dr. Tinker Sachs, who I also know from Georgia State, is here with us today, and she's the chair of the Department of Middle and Secondary Education at Georgia State University's College of Education. And we have Dr. Melissa Aberle-Grasse, who is from Georgia Tech, and she lectures in the Serve, Learn, and Sustain initiative, and she's also been gracious enough to join us today. And Dr. Linda Harklau, I don't see, there she is. And she's joining us all the way from Athens, where she's a professor in the Department of Language and Literacy, Education and Linguistics at, like I said, at the University of Georgia. And so as we ask our panelists to individually take a few minutes to introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit about how they have been maybe going through this year and negotiating the ins and outs of the pandemic, I'm going to ask everyone who is present to please identify yourselves in the chat, like I said before, and then tell us maybe your name and your learning institution. And then as questions come up, if you could please just post them in the chat, and that way we'll try to read all of them quickly, and then I will let you know at the appropriate time that we can bring in those questions, and then you can also interact with our panelists so that everybody gets the best answers to their questions and the most information can come out. And so I guess maybe we will start with the furthest away, Dr. Harklau. And last week we went through this new formula of calling people by their first name. So Dr. Linda for short. Yes, I see, Elizabeth. It was a great method. It really did make for the conversation to flow nicely. But if you could please, as you give us a little bit of an overview of your role and your context, maybe tell us a bit about how COVID-19 has affected the students and the colleagues in your context.
Well, I wear a couple of hats in my program, and so I've seen it affect different people in different ways. one thing that I do is work a lot with graduate students, and I think that this has been just an exceptionally tough year for them. And in a couple ways, I mean, for one thing, we have a master's in TESOL program that was pretty consistently about half Chinese nationals, and they have like all disappeared this year. And so, and I think that that was also following already, you know, problems with Trump administration and visa processing and just the rhetoric. And so it's our master's program has just been decimated by this. At the doctoral level, you know, we have, and I feel especially for the first year students, actually, I think one of our first year students is here. And it's been a really tough year for them. I taught the first year PhD students for the last couple of years. And you know, just the isolation and just trying to keep up their motivation. And, you know, it's hard enough joining a doctoral program, but then on top of that, to have all the, you know, like really trying to keep them motivated in this isolation. So that's one thing. Something else that has definitely not been helped. I've been doing research since 2016 with some of the faculty in the former ESL programs in the university system. And some of you are no doubt aware that the university all but destroyed the existing, they dismantled ESL programs that were remaining in the university system in 2018. So at present, we basically in our university system-wide, do not keep track of English learners. We don't know anything about their admission stats. We don't know about their retention. The only thing that we are allowed to offer them as matriculated students is a one semester co-requisite course, and that's it, period. That's the only thing. So this has had I think a potentially really devastating effect on English learners and campus climate. So that's something that I've been trying to keep an eye on, but really the COVID has stopped us all dead in our tracks, right? Because it's made it very difficult to carry forward this research. People don't have the time really to deal with that. And then finally, just this week, I have to throw this out there. We found out that because the university system is trying to make sure that degrees are not more than 120 credits, they are going to probably have to eliminate ESL courses or out of our program. And I'm just curious if other programs are having similar problems with ESL, you know, being part of especially elementary ed credentials. Before we were teaching them all at least one course. Now it sounds like I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that in 120 credits.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Indeed. Wow. So we will go from the furthest to the closest, since Georgia State is literally a stone's throw from where I'm sitting right now. If Dr. Tinker Sachs would like to follow up with a little bit about how here in the Atlanta program, how we've had, how in your role and your context, how possibly COVID has affected the students and your colleagues in your context.
Yes, thank you. My name is Gertrude Tinker Sachs, and I'm the chair of the Department of Middle and Secondary Education. And also I in the capacity as chair, I'm responsible for the department, for the faculty, for the staff, for the students. And also I'm an associate professor of ESOL language and literacy. I'm responsible for the ESOL endorsement program in our department, that is the face-to-face. We also have an online and also have doctoral students. In response to Dr. Harklau's comment about losing the possibility of the ESOL program, I think that might be the case, some challenges for our folks in the early childhood and education department. I'm in middle secondary education, and we have an exclusive TESOL program at the MAT level, and then the endorsements. And right at the moment, those are not being impacted. But we do have a lot of work to do in our department with regards to ensuring that, and it's one of our action plans for our strategic plan moving forward, to ensure that all of our students, as stated in our curricula, are going to have some specific and explicit teaching about English language learners. And I am pushing very hard at the department level for all faculty to be aware of going beyond a monolingual society and what that looks like. So that's where I'm starting with that. But I need to say that I'm located in Atlanta, and Atlanta is, as you know, the home of the indigenous home of the Chattahoochee and the Creek Indians, as well as a lot of enslaved people have passed through Atlanta, not far from where we are in the College of Education. At 5 Points, enslaved people were sold. And right behind my office in downtown Atlanta is a place where the Atlanta Massacre occurred. And when we realized that I'm a stone's throw also from the home of Martin Luther King, all of that, in a sense, contextualizes our location in an urban site, but our purpose. And if we look at the entire pandemic, you see glaring inequities. And I would like to speak to that. In my role as chair, those inequities have been really catastrophically made visible for a lot of people. COVID-19, as we know, did not impact everybody in the same way. Some of us have been much more profoundly impacted than others. And so we want to remain aware of that and those inequities, those social inequities, particularly of impacting Black and Brown people. And many of those people are English language learners. Like Dr. Harklau said, I work in a low-income community with language learners in their homes. And because of COVID-19, research has been severely impacted. And so my colleagues and I have not been able to go into those spaces, but we are aware that in small spaces with limited access to technologies, all kinds of things are happening there. I'm seeing the results of it with my students. I teach a class of, I meet with a group of pre-service students who are now in the schools. I experience firsthand the dilemmas and the challenges that they are having, and some of them being in schools face-to-face, some being online, some being hybrid, and all the challenges that they are having in working with during this pandemic. At the same time, faculty are facing a number of hurdles, particularly faculty who have children. They are greatly impacted, and I think this is something for all of us to be aware of. My doctoral students and our doctoral students in general have had a lot of issues. In particular, I am more concerned about our international doctoral students who have not been able to go home, who are not able to, who worry about they're transnational, they're living in 2 and 3 places. They worry about their parents and their access to vaccines and good care and their own health here. So we have had those challenges. We have had challenges with our undergraduate students, serious challenges with not having someone to talk to, going and being in schools and being in those spaces, and the level of monitoring and support that is needed. And I wrote down in general for both our master's, undergraduate and doctoral students and faculty and staff, someone to listen to you. It's absolutely so critical that we are hopefully more humane as a result of COVID, more humane in understanding that we are a global society. We belong to the world, all of us. We are part of the world. And what is it we are doing? And GATESOL has a lot to do, can do a lot to support and develop all of us to be much more globally minded, globally conscious during this pandemic. And I'll hold for now. I think I've said enough.
That was fantastic, Dr. Tinker-Sachs. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
in that same tone of global mindedness and the ins and outs of the doctoral students and international students at that, I guess the floor would have to be given over to Ethan Trinh as a student in the program and an international student at that. How have you been affected by the pandemic and all of these new circumstances?
Thank you, Priscilla, for questions. And hello, everyone. My name is Ethan Trinh. My pronoun is they, them, and it is my honor to sit in here with you all to have this kind of conversation. And I think it's really timely needed for all of us to come together. And Dr. Tinker-Sachs, as you may or may not know, is my advisor, professor, and chair. So I'm just like, she's everything for me. So I'm just like, okay. So when Jennifer reached out to me and then invited me to speak on this panel. So I'm just like so happy to know that Dr. Tinker-Sachs is on the panel and then everyone is on the panel. So it's great. And I'm also wondering the questions, what can I contribute to the conversation? Because I'm not holding my PhD yet. So I'm just still a PhD student. What can I do, right? I think Dr. Tinker-Sachs in one of the conversation shared with me that, when we're doing research, we need to stay close to the route. What does that mean? That means that we have to be in the community. We have to live with them. We have to think with them. We have to feel with them, right? So as not only like international student-ish, but also like, the person who also like a doctoral student, like a research assistant and a writer and a scholar, and with all of the labels inside of me, what can I do? So I'm a project coordinator at the Urban Child Studies Center at Georgia State University. So I am working with district coordinator from PK to 12. And so it's also embracing English learners as well. But also it is very interesting to get to know their perspective because the pandemic hit really hard for them. Especially, the student do not have like the access to the internet. Parents have to work from home. They have to take care of the kids and all kind of that. And then teachers, even like they have to work, I think like they have to work extra hours rather than like 8 hours a day. And I think that is like more than a human being can afford. You know what I mean? Like you have to prepare everything to make sure that, the student can sit in front of the computer and learn, or at least like contribute something, right? So when I work with a master student at Georgia State, I think with them, right? I make myself available to the student, not only to the student, but also with the leadership team, because I want to make sure that I'm here. And then whenever you need me, I'll be here and I'm ready to support you. But not only from the master student where I manage them, but I also work with other doctoral students to create the community. Because I believe the power of the community. I believe the power of sharing, the power of conversation, that it can change the way that people live, the way that people think and act, right? So I have, in this conversation, I have Sarah, I have Amber, I have Jane, I have Jennifer. So all of the people that I know, like, they come together, we are sitting in the different spaces, but we communicate with each other, we connect with each other. And I think that is the beauty of connection, you know, across spaces. And even like, you know, a small message like, hey, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? You know, it makes a day for me, or at least to some people. So when I'm trying to connect with, you know, not only the institution level, but also like with the personal level as well. And I'm trying to connect with the mental health, you know, like this, the well-being of a person, of a human being. And, you know, with all of the responsibility that we are taking with the different labels, you know, so we are like scholar, writer, researcher, doctor, student, and you know, like agile. And some of us like you have to be like a parent, a sister, a brother, and boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever we call ourselves. So I think with all of those responsibility, like healthy responsibility that we are taking on, I would love to emphasize on the importance of connecting and supporting and building the community with each other, especially in these difficult times. I'm going to stop right there.
That was great. Thank you so much. And as we continue to move forward with our panel, Dr. Melissa Aberle-Grasse as a representative from Georgia Tech, and if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about the context there and how you have been negotiating this new normal.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm actually not a doctor, so you can call me Ms. Melissa, everybody, or Melissa is fine. And I want to say a shout out to my colleague Kendall, also from the Georgia Tech Language Institute. She has been one of the most adept among us this year at reaching out and creating community digitally. And thank you, Ethan, for that emphasis on community. And I loved your phrase, thinking with them. It's a great phrase. So our context, many of you know at Georgia Tech related to ESL is a little different. We are under, the Language Institute is under the academic unit of professional education. So we have been around serving ESL at Georgia Tech for more than 60 years, but in a little different way. Pre-COVID, actually at least 5 years pre-COVID, for many years, the intensive English program was really our core. But starting COVID, due to policies and due to changes worldwide, IEPs have been shrinking. So we have been doing more of the services that we provide on campus. So we do work with graduate students. We have credit and non-credit courses, non-credit courses with graduate students. We do assessments with graduate students. And we've also done more professional education courses. We have some highly successful MOOCs that we've developed in the last couple of years. How has COVID-19 affected us? I'd like to share two stories, and the word for the first one is trauma. And I invite you to each just remember some of the students that you accompanied this year or yourself. I'm thinking of an example of a visiting math student last year to Georgia Tech. He was part of an exclusive program studying math at Georgia Tech for one semester, but took a couple English classes with us. Super sharp and diligent. At first, seamlessly showed up when we suddenly went online. And then suddenly one day, he showed up for a couple days on his screen with kind of disheveled hair and his, bags under his eyes. And then he just didn't show up for a couple days. And when I reached out to him, sure enough, he just was really, really distraught about how am I going to finish this semester? Their flights kept getting canceled back to China. He had no idea how he was going to get back. And he also then tried to had an internship opportunity, no idea what was going to happen to that. And it also makes me think of this spring. We continue to see nationwide that we at the university level are seeing widespread racism and microaggression against our Asian students. Something that a recent Pew Research survey said that although 8 out of 10 Americans are positively in favor of international students, but this year more than half of them said there should be restrictions on Chinese students. So trauma continues. The second story, though, I know that we all experienced too with our students, was the resilience and how much they, inspired us and helped us keep going. And I'm thinking particularly of a 25-year-old student from Cameroon. She was one of those that even though she was really worried about some of her family back home in Cameroon, she was always checking on other students. She just kept going and, kept a strong and positive attitude. She was in an English for Service Learning class that I've developed, and she continued after the class with the community service that she was doing. So more importantly, I think for all of us, the way that it's affected us is just, as others have mentioned, the number of applicants and students in all of our programs has really dropped through the floor. We're down to about 14 classes and 3 levels in our intensive English program, and even our short courses have shrunk. Our faculty team has shrunk, and so we're also, as also has been mentioned, really looking at what does it mean? I think this is the next part of our discussion. So I'll pass it back to you, to the moderator, but how do we basically plan, knowing that post-COVID, what are the important issues that how do we move forward?
Indeed, moving forward is it seems to be the new challenge, right? And I really loved what you said about the importance of checking on others and how that service to others. I think it's become even more apparent. It's sad to think about those microaggressions that you bring up and the racism, and how Dr. Tinker Sachs also made mention of it, how the inequities have been brought to the forefront during this time and this pandemic. And I think that as we move forward in the conversation, indeed, that those service opportunities will probably come up to the surface as a big part of, what we will need to do. And so I thought maybe we could follow up with some of our follow-up questions. Maybe Dr. Harklau could maybe tell us a little bit about what do you think might be some of the top priorities for what we need to do now moving forward? Because you also made mention of some of the issues that you saw, at the program at UGA, how the similar situation with the Chinese nationals disappearing from your program, and how this what has appeared come up to the surface as some possible next steps.
Yeah, we've also had the same anti-Asian, anti-Chinese episodes on campus, and students telling us stories of just random incidents of so anyway, that where to go now? That's the thing. I think it's something that we need collective work on to at least within the university system of Georgia, to get them to understand how important international students are, for one thing, to our community and to the health of our university system. I just get the sense that it's always an afterthought And there's also definitely some underlying prejudices there and xenophobia. And I think when people start talking about issues of diversity, that's just like never part of the discussion. I was watching some of the university systems set of videos for this year on diversity and inclusion initiatives. There is not a peep about that. I mean, so that's something that I think, would be helpful to get some kind of collective action, maybe talk with Tammy Rosner in the USG office and really try to think about how we try to make the university system as a whole more welcoming and to include international students on diversity and equity and inclusion initiatives. So I think that might be an important thing. In terms of the matriculated students too, that's been my concern in my research, that we have like this entire group of students who are disappearing off the radar, that the university system apparently has decided just don't exist anymore, which is English learners who are trying to matriculate from our high schools into colleges. So that I think is a whole different set of issues, having to do with college completion reforms and, the whole rhetoric around complete college America, strong start to finish, momentum year, and all the other like sloganeering that we have right now about college and career pathways. And somewhere in there, English learners have to be in the mix. I mean, Georgia is, 10th in the country now in terms of English learners. And we have, well over 20% of the kids who take the SAT speak a language other than English at home, they're there, it just is ridiculous that we're pretending that in Georgia, we don't have any English learners apparently in our universities. So that's I think that really takes Georgia TESOL and more broadly TESOL nationally kind of attention and focus to establish some kind of basic guidelines for how we monitor English learners as an underrepresented population in our colleges. So that's something we need to do together, I think.
Yes.
Does somebody have something that they wish to add as the conversation is getting more, I don't want to say heated, but as the topic is, so that do some of our guests, yes.
Yeah, just to build on that a little bit, I'm about the whole, it's kind of the broad area of addressing the real assets of international students on our campus and advocating for that. Also, just have recently read in the news, the American Council on Education has recently published a report, and they are calling for a new compact between universities and international students. So this has been called for beyond us. We need to take it up and see what this means in Georgia. And what they're saying is, what does this moment say about, this is about money, let's be real, but it is so much more. And so let's take this moment and say, this is not just about money. And if we want to re-attract international students to the US, to campuses, we have to look at how to support them. And this report actually outlines ways that language learners need to be supported on campuses. And this would relate to the language learners coming from Georgia as well. Really taking seriously, what does it mean for universities to support this, not take them for granted. So I think it's an exciting moment for that. Yes.
Hi, Melissa.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Ethan.
I just echo so much with what you just say, how to support for international students and especially English learners. You know, at a higher level, at a higher education. And the first thing that comes to my mind is that stop using them as a person to sit in the DEI, to stop sitting them in the so-called like diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. Stop doing that. Or if you're doing that, if you get them, like you would like to have them to sit in the committee, really acknowledge them, really listen to them, really have a plan to work together, to think together, rather than like, because you are the persons of color, because you are an international student, because of this and because of that, so you do every work and we just like sitting here and then do nothing. So we have to be really careful about, not only like inviting a person to serve as like the expert, right? To bring like the voice, because I truly believe in the voice, in the sincere and, the unique voices of the international student and English learners, because they come from the diverse background. But it does not mean that, we exploit them, we use them for the political purposes, which I hate so much. And I myself, an example. I myself am an example, and I have to advocate for myself. And I have to say no. I have to like draw the boundary and say like, no, if you really appreciate my being, my presence, my existence, please come work with me. Otherwise, I'm gonna step down. And finally, I'm just like step down from like another DI work, because I don't think it's worth it, because I don't think people evaluate my position, my voice, right? So, just like coming back to the very first statement that I say. So if the institution really focus on the DEI, really like think about like the presence of diversity, and if you want to diversify, please treat us as a human being rather than like an add-on values. Don't do that, period. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
Thank you, Ethan. We have one of the other participants in our conversation today, Mr. Surab Anand. I'm sure that I'm pronouncing that wrong. Because you're beginning your program at the University of Georgia, what has been your experience with the international aspect of the university and that feeling that we've been sort of discussing here the last few minutes?
Thank you, Dr. Noble. This is my first time that I'm attending this town hall meeting. I can see my professor here, Professor Harklau, and she has been really supportive. But I cannot also ignore the lack of intentional spaces where people are not aware of the concerns of international students, which are very, very peculiar in their own way. I have a background of teaching other international students at bachelor's level, and very often I have realized that the kind of current rhetoric that we are able to that we are in is trying to portray or trying to develop an environment where the things such as capital rights, assassination of people of color, and English hegemony is okay. It is not okay. And I think it's more than, it's as teachers, it's our moral responsibilities as well to create intentional opportunities where international students and domestic students or domestic people in general could come together and learn about each other's problems or concerns or areas of improvements, and talk out. And so I'm really happy that we are having these conversations. I'm very sad about listening other international students' experiences, witnessing racism and a lot of times I get a lot of emails. My colleagues have been trying to voice out their voices when the coronavirus is termed as China virus. This is ridiculous. This is obnoxious, and I think at the same time, we should really think about the real purpose of education. It's not about having a degree. It's also about think critically, grow as a person intellectually. So I think the present scenario is very alarming, especially for people of color and international students. And despite they being equally deserving, I guess there's still a lot of work which needs to be done, and it has to start somewhere. And I'm glad that we are having these conversations here, where there's a discussion of the struggles. And I know it's a very, very it's very organic. Hence, that takes a lot of time to reflect and come into reality. But I think if we don't start, then there will be no reality. So I'm really glad that this kind of conversation is happening, and I'm happy to be here. And before I unmute myself, I want to say that my faculty members have been really, really supportive. I'm one of the international PhD students who joined his PhD journey in the middle of pandemic. So I think I just couldn't be more glad to be not only taught, but also personally mentored by faculty members who believe that international students are equally deserving and need support, not because they are weak, but just because they are little less unaware of their own potential, and they have their voice, and a little support will help them reflect those.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear about that support and you receiving that feeling here in Georgia. I see a Dr. Amber Goodwin from Sam Houston State University. Could she unmute herself? There we go. I'm sorry.
Amber
She's gone,
gone.
right?
Yeah.
Amber's gone. That's unfortunate. Yeah, because I couldn't see her picture, but I was like, oh my goodness, she's still there on the chat. Maybe, possibly, no. Dr. Tinker Sachs, can you think of, has there been the opportunity during this year of have some resources maybe from the university or from other places that maybe have helped in this during this challenging time? Have you found some any kind of support that there was just mention of some support from the departments themselves, which I think is very important. But then in the department, have you found other resources?
Well, I'm the department chair. a lot falls in my lap. And on top of that, I'm an international person. So definitely I am acutely aware of, and most of my students come from other domains outside of the United States. So I'm acutely aware of the challenges that international students have, and it behooves us, whether you are a department chair, faculty member, student, to bring the issues to the persons to whom will listen to you. That's the first thing. We are talking a lot at the institutional level. And as Ethan said, things start on the ground. Let's start from the ground. Where are we? And what are we doing on the ground level, right? There is always so much more work that we can do. And those of us that truly care, we're going to do the work. We are doing the work. And that means in my role as a chair, that means bringing it to the department, bringing it to the dean, bringing the issues to the provost and the president. I am doing that. You can be sure of it. It also means creating spaces for students to gather. And I am definitely doing that. all kinds of spaces for both faculty and students. Of course, the challenge has been during COVID, what kinds of spaces are we creating in the online spaces? Or are we congregating in our driveways? What are we doing? Are we creating those kinds of other ways of gathering, right? And then what else can we do in terms of funding? And so one of the things that folks in our department have done, these are the faculty, because most conferences were canceled during 2020, and many have been canceled for 2021. Faculty themselves offered to put any monies that they had been allocated for conferences, for travel, to a doctoral students fund to support our doctoral students. I'm so proud of our faculty for doing that. And then we have students with all kinds of issues. These issues come to me. I try to talk with students. We just don't make assumptions about our students. And these can be undergraduate students, these can be doctoral students, these can be master's level students, all kinds of issues and challenges. Some of our students are having lots of psychological issues, suicidal thoughts, very, very serious challenges, because we know, all of us in this space know the depth of the challenges that our students have been having with COVID, and our faculty and our staff. And we have to cover for everybody, as well as take care of our own mental well-being and our own mental health so that we can support other folks. And so this kind of space is good to keep us all uplifted, to energize us, to help us to go back and continue to do the work. The monies can be found. There are pockets of money from the provost, pockets of money from the dean. And so we have been doing that, reaching out. Every time there's a little issue, I scour what is available in the department, and I can tell you, it is not much that is available. As far as I know, I echo the sentiments that have been made earlier about the University System of Georgia. So much more could have been done. So much more could still be done to support not only international students, but all students in a whole myriad of different ways to help ease the challenges that they are having with COVID, as well as faculty, right? We lifted one of the challenges for faculty by taking away the evaluations for only part of 2020. Actually, it would have been good if we had had no evaluations for the entire 2020, right? Just imagine the breath, the sigh of relief that faculty would have had. Then they can focus on all the worries about how to engage our students, all the worries about reaching out to students and doing so much more. So there are many, many, many profound issues that we could address. And funding is always an issue. I haven't found little pockets here and there of the different agencies that could help, though faculty are applying for big grants, big and small, right? But not of the kind that you can say, can I redistribute the funds to our students without going through a lot of protocols? The easiest one has been thus far that the faculty have offered to put their money, we just redirected that money into one area, and then we are giving that money away right now to our doc students who are in need.
That's great. Yeah, that's a one way that we can certainly help. And Melissa, you were saying a little bit about the pathway program, and do you think, because one of the things that we'd like to discuss in this in this meeting today are some of the ways that Georgia TESOL could possibly help in moving forward, that the program of, can you explain to those that aren't reading it in the chat about the pathway for helping students to through the University System of Georgia? You're muted though. You have to unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, sorry, I had to move to my phone, plan B. I don't know if it's relevant but it seems to me that there must be some kind of parallel, because I'm also so concerned about the inequities that are facing all English language learners in Georgia following the pandemic. And it's going to severely affect their chances at higher ed for years to come. So the pathway program that Georgia Tech has come up with, and they just expanded it this year, is actually not anything to do with English language learning, but it could be partly that. So what they did was expanded the a particular opportunity for all Atlanta public school students who, if they apply to Georgia Tech and they are not admitted, they can follow a pathway to guaranteed admission to Georgia Tech by following a particular program of study with other higher ed institutions for 1 or 2 years. It outlines what classes they need to take. It does offer some kind of distant support, but mostly it outlines the pathway, and then it says, if you get this GPA by, it's much lower than it was, trying to get in as a freshman, then they're guaranteed admission to Georgia Tech after a year or two. So what it made me think of is, so how do we envision something for English language learners applying to any USG program that would somehow support them if their, language score, if that's the only thing that's, their issue? How do we support them into admission and after they're admitted? There must be some funding and way of doing that.
Yeah, and at least the people at the former Perimeter College program, ESL program, told me that they actually went in the opposite direction, that the USG, yes, that they had an agreement that students who were matriculated and enrolled in the ESL program had a path to conditional admission at GSU, and they actually took it away. So that's where, but I am so on board with that idea, because that's exactly the kind of incentive that you want to build, right? Because otherwise, if you tell people, if I identify myself as an English learner, it means I'm going to have to take, 3 extra courses. Of course, nobody is going to tell you that. And so, but something like this, where you could actually build that pathway to admission, would be wonderful. And I think that's right now, the university system says everybody has to take the SAT or ACT, and you have to get a certain floor score before you can be admitted. There's the exceptions, but it's at many schools you won't get in. I mean, you just won't. So yeah, to have something like that is a wonderful idea. I really like that.
Yeah, I agree. We have another guest. I don't know if she's turned off her camera now, but Alexis Nelson from Kentucky, because I'm very curious to hear what's happening there, or what do you see as the parallels? I mean, if I'm understanding correctly from your GATESOL, I understood that that's Kentucky, but I could be wrong.
Can I be heard?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, great. So actually, when I was filling out the application to be able to be here with you guys today, I just put that I'm a part of Korean TESOL as well.
Oh, Korean TESOL.
So I just finished about 4 years with CoTESOL out there, doing our in-persons to doing our Zooms, and then to presenting at the international and the national conferences. So now that I am back in the States, back in Georgia for the first time, I was very curious about the TESOL chapter here, and really curious about if I could do anything to help and what that would be. So I thought I'd just kind of jump right into your guys' schedules and see what's going on. And I'm just really impressed and a little sad to hear how things have been going here since I've been gone, but really excited about the future.
Yes, it's one of those like a time capsule sort of thing. It's like, oh yeah, I've been gone from the States for a while, and I come back, and this is what I have to face. No, send me back to Korea. I'm sure you're feeling. That's great. I'm so excited about your gung ho attitude, and yes, coming to join us. Welcome to Georgia TESOL, and I we look forward to putting you to work. Jennifer will make sure.
I love it.
Because it's like, yes, ask not what Georgia TESOL can do for you, but what you can do for Georgia TESOL. So yes. Yeah, be careful where you raise your hand, because it can go anywhere. But in general, so we talked a little bit about the non-academic needs of the students as well as the teachers, but then and these have been some great input about how Georgia TESOL can help to move forward. I don't know if somebody else from our panelists has something else in that vein that they wish to add, or if maybe Jennifer. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Tinker-Sachs.
One of the other things I would like to say is that it would be wonderful if Georgia TESOL could offer some small funds to support those people who want to be ESOL educators. They're having a really hard time. So interns, create the criteria. How do we want to support those people who want to teach English language learners, right? Create a pathway for them to be given some support, given some special support, not only to present at conferences and talk about the issues that they're facing, but some support throughout their programs. I don't know, I have not been aware that there were any that are like that. I'm looking in the chat to see if anyone is typing anything. For the ESOL MAT, for example, programs, right? So that would be one way of supporting English language learners. Another way is many projects funded to teachers who are in schools with language learners who are having challenges. Even if it means purchasing one laptop for one family, or something that teachers are saying that they need and it can help to make life a little bit easier for some of the kids. That's another way that GATESOL can lend a hand. And so these little projects are ways that we can just offer encouragement to teachers, even if it means giving teachers who teach English language learners a goodie bag. One of the things that I did for our faculty, and I'm going to do it again, is I purchased some little baggies called essential items. And they were mailed to faculty's homes. And I hand wrote a letter to each faculty member. I have more than 25 faculty. But I think, what does that do? A care bag of little goodies. Now, of course, the essential items are things like a little whiteboard that you can use when you're doing vocabulary, markers, sticky papers, a pad, a writing pad, pens, things like that. I call them essential items. But that means that we're thinking about you and your space, because you're not coming into the office in the same way. People are not coming to schools. So all of these little goody things, incentives, Georgia TESOL can do to provide a little level of support for teachers and students, as well as those who are learning to become teachers of language learners.
Thank you, Dr. Tinker-Sachs. Mr. Anand, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, I was just to be in echo with Professor Sachs, I also want to say that there are a lot of teaching platforms for which teachers have to pay, but it is free for students to use. So maybe creating some outlets where teachers could apply for the funding, where GATESOL can sponsor those those platforms for teachers, so that learning could be more formative and leading to community building. So I recently wrote this article where I'm talking about 5 applications fostering community building in the classroom. But while I was writing about that article, I was also thinking that teaching is also a profession which is severely underpaid. So we also have to think about the commercial from the commercial point of view as well. So if GATESOL could offer some funding, maybe professional enhancement, or whichever way that might be more leadership mechanics, but that might really vindicate teachers to keep using technology in more community building, fostering ways.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great idea. That's very feasible, kind of reachable. Is we have these mini grants and everything, and to make them kind of app specific or whatever, and we could maybe get some sponsorships from these companies if they want to do the apps or whatever, and that we could maybe get some. Can you forward us to the maybe to Georgia TESOL, or to maybe here on the chat the copy of your article, and then we could see what those awesome 5 apps were that you wrote about, because I'm interested in reading your writing. Thank you very much. Elizabeth Webb has something to share.
I just want to first thank all of the panelists for what they've said today. My mind feels like it's exploding, and also our guests who have been so eloquent. It's so exciting to hear from you. I just want to bring up something that's very nuts and bolts here in Georgia, but I think it's important here since we have Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, and Georgia State represented in the room. Are you aware that the state of Georgia, through the Georgia Department of Education, has for 30 years made a pathway open to students who are English learners, whereby they can take English ESOL courses for the first 2 classes towards their English language arts requirements, they are rather than taking only English language arts, they are English ESOL courses. They're based on the same standards, but they do accommodate their sheltered courses. Then they take 9th grade Lit and Comp, which I don't know why it's called 9th grade Lit and Comp. That's just what the DOE. And then they take American Literature. But the University of Georgia, equitable as it is not allowing students who have earned their English language arts credits through those first 2 courses to be admitted. In other words, even if you earn an A or a B in the 2 required English language arts courses, clearly showing that you have mastered the knowledge and skills that you need in English, you cannot be admitted because you were not proficient at the beginning in the first and second years of your high school career. So if in 9th grade you weren't proficient enough to take a English language arts course and get a good, and then in 10th grade, so the discrimination that is being practiced is actually retroactive. It's not good enough to be able to get